In the western part of the Mediterranean, right in the heart of this closed but tumultuous sea, there is a land that, as well as having a centuries-old history and a unique natural environment, is also well known for the special characteristics of its inhabitants. For many centuries, perched on the slopes of the highest chain of mountains on the island, lives a community that is well known for its kind and generous people that are both hardworking and creative, and who have contributed, together with other inhabitants from nearby mountain communities, to promoting great interest in this extraordinary place. The people from Aritzo have been very clever in administrating the resources of their environment, so much so that they have created an economy based on local products and their willingness to use them. The area that they occupy is completely mountainous. This is an area right in the center of Sardinia, a vast area where the highest peaks are over 1,500 meters high. These are the Gennargentu Mountains, the most imposing and highest mountains on the island, that end down in the Flumendosa Valley, one of the most inaccessible and impenetrable areas of these Sardinian mountains. Looking at the Gennargentu Mountains, we can see these silver reflections from the shale rocks that form these peaks. These smooth and reflective rocks most certainly inspired the person who, looking out over this area, decided to call it the Silver Door. The highest of all of these peaks, at 1,834 meters above sea level, the Punta la Marmora rises up and almost no vegetation grows there. As soon as we go down a little, however, the landscape changes. Tangled forests grow down to the valley to abruptly stop in front of the channels and small streams that flow into them. The abundance of water has most certainly been one of the reasons why these people have been drawn to this area. Even if it appears to be harsh and difficult to colonize, it has become home to these people of the mountains. Organized and divided up into small villages quite close to each other, these people have developed and consolidated a way of life that still resists the rules of modern life. As in every country, people are completely bound to the territory that they occupy. Usually, the community observes the rules of life that are written into the conscience of every human being. Then locally you can find particular variants connected to each ethnic group, which, together with other elements, distinguish one people from another.
Nel centro Sardegna e nelle Barbagie in particolare,
in central Sardinia and in the Barbagia in particular, there existed until recent times, I believe that it still exists, if only in a residual form, a customary code of rights that was known as a code of Barbarity revenge. One of the principal aspects of this code concerns the disputes that formed, especially in a pastoral community, where up until quite recently the most common crime was rustling or animal stealing. In these cases, the parties met up to try to resolve the disputes by using as mediation the swearing of an oath. Fundamentally, what does this practice of swearing on oath mean? How does it develop? What used to happen is that men looking for stolen animals, following the trail that took them to a place, usually a cattle or a sheep pen, in which they asked, in a metaphoric way, a proof of innocence, because this crime could be ascribed to a particular person, as the trail led them to this person's animal pens.
Del fatto che altrimenti a loro poteva essere ascritto, dal momento appunto che le tracce conducevano in quel sito. Quindi si chiedeva fondamentalmente con una formula rituale.
Therefore, then they asked, using a ritual formula, "Can you prove that you are not connected to these facts? Otherwise you will be accused." At this point, the suspect must swear a solemn oath by placing his hand over an amulet or talisman that is positioned on the victim's hand. He is then made to recite the following formula. I swear that I am not connected to these facts, that I am not directly responsible, nor was I a witness, not even involuntary, nor was I the inciter of this crime.
Over the centuries, the world has changed, and aspects connected to the past can now only be found in history books, and, especially here in the Barbagia, from historical accounts that these families hand down from generation to generation, especially if they are interested in the facts of the past. The passage of time has not changed the geometry and the variety of these landscapes, that together with the magical changes of the seasons bestow great beauty to this land. From the hill of Texile, turning towards east-northeast, we can see the great mountain on its western side, where hundreds of years ago the village of Aritzo was born. But the economic history of its inhabitants, even if it is connected to the entire ARITZO territory, began on the opposite side of this majestic mountain, the eastern side that looks out onto the peaks of Gennargentu. In this place called Fontana Cugnada, hidden fountain, called this because of the strong blasts of the mistral winds that blow over Sardinia, that have excavated just under the peak of the great mountain numerous round pits that are several meters deep, with a diameter of about 10 to 12 meters wide. These formed the important economical beginning of the village of Aritzo, and a significant page in the cultural and economic history of Sardinia. These pits, that today are almost all full of earth and covered by ferns, especially in the season, have been for about 400 years witnesses to great sacrifice, very hard work, but also great joy to generations of niargios, the snow collectors. Today, the Fontana Cugnada area is the domain of animals who live here in the wild, even though they do have an owner. The wild horses that find shelter in and around the rocks make this place even more evocative, especially when they suddenly gallop away and then start to climb the slopes that seem to be easy to climb, but in reality are very steep and inaccessible. Centuries ago, when the neviere or snow pits were operative, it was forbidden by law for cattle herders and shepherds to bring their animals to pasture within 30 meters of the snow pits. Those who broke the law were arrested and taken to the narrow bovida, the ancient prison that was built in the center of the village of Aritzo. The structure is one of the oldest buildings of this village, and even today it is almost completely intact and in its original form. Here, both men and women were imprisoned, even for very small crimes.
This prison was built by the Spanish in 1600, made entirely with local shale rocks. Then around 1933 or 1935, even my mother and two other women from Aritzo spent the night in this prison because they were accused of stealing a faggot of wood.
Among the prison cells, there was one that was particularly feared because it had no opening and therefore no air or light, and was reserved for the most dangerous of prisoners. Built entirely with the local shale rock, without even being whitewashed, it has a small opening in the roof where the prisoner was lowered in with a gigantic iron chain around his neck, which was to make sure that the prisoner did not escape, and also to discourage any attempt to do so. Casa Bovida, together with the other very old houses here, make up the old village center of Arezzo. The houses, many of which are built of stone, look out onto each other and form narrow passageways that can only be reached on foot. Here, daily life flows slowly, and it is quite common to find inhabitants that live to over 100 years old.
I taught here for 42 years. Imagine that. 42 years, and I have been retired now for 30 years. So make the calculation. I am 92 years old, and it was my birthday yesterday.
After many spring seasons, now even this one has passed, and in the Aritzo area, summer has arrived. This is also the driest season. The lack of rainfall makes the area very dry and the roads dusty. However, the animals are able to drink at the numerous springs that constantly spout here all year round, although in the summer, not as much as in the other seasons. The waters that spout from the heart of the mountain are very cold indeed. At Fontana Cugnada, the ferns begin to dry out, and in the mountains, even if the temperatures are never particularly high, flowers begin to fall from their stalks. Some of them are collected before they fall to the ground. The small elder trees have flowers that, when they are expertly cooked, become delicious meals when using in the ancient local recipes. In the past, they were collected and delivered to the local pharmacy, where experts used these raw materials to make ointments, relaxing potions, and, amazingly, even anti-inflammatory medicines. But Leah and Maria collect the soft white elderflowers, mostly now to make their special jam, so that in a few months' time, when there will be an important village festival, they will be able to offer the visitors a taste of their excellent products. The clever dexterity of these mountain people has been quite certainly helped by the presence of the numerous woods and forests that can be found all over the area. For many centuries, the people from Arezzo have based their economy and livelihood on the use of snow. I want to show you one of the most interesting pages of Sardinian economic history. Recently, a group of young people from Arezzo, in particular Kiko and Mirko, over the last few years have given new life to the old production of what is known as the Carapina, a local lemon ice sorbet. Thanks to this reconstruction in film, we're able to relive several fragments of a past life and to observe one of the most important aspects, although rather unknown, of Arezzo culture. It is the history of snow and of the niargios, the men who looked after it, collected it, and then transported ice all over the island. These images show us the niargios when, during the summer, they climbed up to the snow pits to collect the ice. In reality, their work began in the winter, or, in several cases, the previous spring, just after the last snowfall, when the niargios started to fill the great pits with snow. These pits had been dug out in the earth on the mountain, in particular at Fontana Cugnada, but this also happened in other parts of the territory. Warmed by their mastrucche di pelo, that are tunics made of long-haired goatskin, their work consisted in filling the snow pits by using strong containers or tubs that were used to transfer and fill the great well-like pits with snow. Whilst some of them unloaded the snow, the others pressed it down with their feet or using heavy wooden implements. This operation was particularly important to compact the snow, in order for it to last in time. Even though it was very cold indeed, sometimes children accompanied their fathers in these moments, although they did not wear their best clothes, as the children in these images do. the winter work concluded by covering the snow pits. The snow collectors protected the snow from wind, from rain and sun using branches, ferns, hay, and finally covering everything with a great amount of earth. In the late spring on the mountains, they started the work of uncovering the snow pits and began the distribution and sale of ice all over the island of Sardinia. Several documents kept in the historical archives of principal Sardinian cities tell us that the sale of ice finished on the last day of October, and that the people from ARITZO who took part in this work were several hundreds. Even in 1600, 70 horses were used, traveling mostly by night, to take ice to the city of Cagliari. From this documented information, we can reach the conclusion of how flourishing the snow industry was, especially if you think that the most important cities on the island, as well as Oristano, Nuoro, Sassari, and numerous minor cities where there were large private houses, all were regularly supplied with ice from Gennargentu. In the small town of Codronjanus, even today there still exists several depositories where the ice was kept, whilst waiting to be sorted and delivered to northern Sardinia. The name of this alley, La Neviera, the snow pit, reminds us of its past. Quite near, in the town of Ploaghe, they conserve a wonderful open-air piece of history. It is an ice box, built using a natural cavity that has an entrance in the lower part of the hill. In this place, the riders coming from ARITZO unloaded their horses and handed over their precious load to the warehouse men, who would then store them in this huge depository before beginning the widespread distribution. From these Barbaricini snow pits, it wasn't easy to travel to all of the different destinations on this island. These were daily journeys, as was the preparation of the ice at the snow pits. One of these pits is still in quite good condition, situated near Aritzo, so we are able to get an idea of how they collected the ice. This could have been a scene that we could have observed towards the end of the summer season, when only a small amount of ice remained on the bottom of the snow pit. The niargios, armed with axes and heavy woolen bags, removed the insulating cover, and from this icy mass began to break out the slabs of ice and placing them together with some hay into the woolen bags. They were then very careful to balance out the weight of the load so as not to create difficulty for the horses that transported them. In this case, not all of the riders were adults. There were also some quite young men. In the past, however, it was only grown men that could face the dangers and difficulties of traveling at night for several days. The young men or boys with their horses took the ice into the villages, happy to be able to repeat the same job that their ancestors have always done, every year at the beginning of summer. Horses were not always able to reach the snow pits and the collecting sites. Quite often, the riders were obliged to stop near to the snow pits and wait for the niargios, who, using their great strength, brought them down the ice and helped them load up the horses so that they could continue to deliver the ice. This work, that was extremely difficult and hard but quite profitable, came almost to an end around the 1920s, when ships from Norway started to arrive with their loads of ice that they sold at much lower prices and were able to take over the Sardinian ice market, and which then ended completely when electricity was installed and began producing ice in Cagliari. This technology that changed the world now gradually began to arrive even in places that were far away from the modern world. Today, after more than a century of inventions, discoveries, and a highly technological way of life, we are now attracted to the simple life of the past, and we appreciate situations that remind us of those days and that help us learn about the fascinating history of the niargios and of the Carapina. The modern-day Carapinieris have for the last 10 years organized the Festival of the Carapina, which is a lemon ice sorbet. This event is held in Aritzo every year on the 14th and 15th of August, and thousands of people come to this village just to taste this famous sorbet, made from the same original recipe and obtained by placing water, sugar, and lemon juice in a round metal container. Once it is sealed, the carapiniera, the metal container, is then put into another larger container made of wood, which is called su barrile, the barrel. This barrel, as well as the carapiniera, also contains ice and salt. The contents of the carapiniera is then mixed using a special technique of rotating to the right and then to the left. When this is done for quite a while, it demonstrates the resistance and the strong arms of the sorbet maker. The salt in the ice must be constantly topped up, as gradually it is consumed by the action of the sorbet maker and the friction that it causes, but all of this in order to thicken and freeze this very tasty sorbet. After about 20 minutes, the metal container is opened. An expert sorbet maker understands straight away from the weight of the container and also by touching the outside when the right moment has arrived. But this tasty ice sorbet is not yet ready to eat. At this point, it's necessary to homogenize the sorbet. In order to scrape the sides of the container where the mixture has frozen and to amalgamate it with the liquid center, he needs to use what is called ferru e ferru, which means metal instrument. It is a special metal spoon which works the mixture from the sides of the container, mixing in the liquid, and with his expert skill, the carapinaio is able in no time at all to obtain a wonderful dense and concentrated lemon ice sorbet. Still a few more moments, however, and using a wooden spoon called ferruellina, which means wooden instrument, finally the carapina can be served. For most people, the taste is so particular and irresistible that not only children who are always attracted to games and sweets, but also adults, they all want a taste of this ice cream made in the mountains. The people from Aritzo are particularly proud to be the only ones in Sardinia to have continued this ancient activity. Over the past few years, everyone who walks in the main road in the village cannot but notice the great mural that is dedicated to the Carapina. The colors of the hot summer season are immortalized forever in this painting, but now these colors are about to leave Aritzo, as summer is almost over. The local population knows that soon, as in the centuries-old tradition, autumn will arrive, and it is a very important season for them, as they will be able to harvest the mountain fruit. A part of this harvest will be sold. The rest will become provisions that every family will use during the winter season. In the morning, the sun comes up behind the mountains and shines on the village, still quite silent and bathed in tranquility. The summer visitors, after having walked up and down the roads in the village, restored by the warm and fresh summer temperatures and also having discovered some of the wild places that this village and territory has to offer, begin to leave Sardinia. Surely, they will not forget this tiny village of only 1,500 inhabitants that is embraced by these mountains and that has gradually, after having grown up around this small nucleus of a village over the last century, began to develop into the place that we know today. Everyone who has stayed here for some weeks or even just a few days will take home with them memories of this extraordinary nature that is part of Gennargentu, the mountain shelters and the wonderful food, ably prepared by the mountain shepherds. The meat from these animals reared in the wild has such a special flavor that it will be difficult to forget. In Sardinian gastronomical culture, a good wine is very important and is almost certainly accompanied by cheese, in particular mature cheeses. In this case, the protagonist here, together with an excellent glass of wine, is a very well-known cheese, which is rather particular because of its characteristics, as it is a cheese that is allowed to rot and is called in Sardinian casu marzu. In modern life, where machines now substitute men, perhaps they have slowly lost the occasions whereby the families can come together to work and develop the family values they had before. Happy to have done a good job, they leave the must to ferment until, after a few weeks, the wine should be ready to be processed and then put into barrels. The people of Aritzo dedicate a great part of the autumn to preparing for the Chestnut and Hazelnut Festival. This is a good occasion to sell and also proudly show off their local products from their land, and also to present their local culture. Particularly busy now are the people who make torrone or nougat. In order to make this nougat so that it is ready to eat, they need to dedicate a great deal of time to making it. Today, machines make life easier, because in the past, this was a very tiring job indeed. In order to understand what happens and also to relive these emotions, even if it means getting as tired as before, Bastiano Pranteddu, together with his wife and mother, have recreated the old atmosphere of the nougat makers who once worked in the piazzas.
Now the heat melts the honey and it slowly cooks. In a little while, we must put the egg white in.
The European Union directives oblige them, for safety and hygienic reasons, the use of freeze-dried egg whites obtained from fresh eggs to avoid eggs that have gone bad. In the past, the eggs came from several women who traveled the area selling their eggs, but often it wasn't easy to find enough eggs, so in this case the nougat makers sent someone out who went from house to house to buy egg whites from neighboring families. In order to collect the egg whites, they had a measuring glass, usually a wine glass, that could contain 3 egg whites, and they paid in the 1960s 45 lira, exactly half the cost of 3 eggs, that is 90 lira.
Now we've put in the egg white. And this is the most delicate phase, because the egg white must now be whipped up with the honey.
Let me stir.
No, I'll carry on.
I can do it better than you.
She used to do this even when she was pregnant.
I was 18 when I began to do this job, and I still do it today. I have had 8 children, of which 5 when we still made the nougat manually, and 3 when we finally got the machine. When my first daughter was born, I had finished making the nougat at about midnight, and my daughter was born at 7 o'clock in the following morning.
Many years have passed, and Elvira now uses electricity and the power of the machines to make the nougat, even if there are some things that are still done by hand, like the preparation of the boxes that contain this nougat. Inside the box, a thin piece of grease-proof paper is placed, and then a strip of rice paper that comes into contact with the nougat that becomes part of the sweet, as it is still warm when the box is closed. After about 1.5 hours of continuous work, the appearance of air bubbles indicate that the whipping of the egg whites and the honey is almost complete. After another half hour, the mixture has become quite dense and is very white.
Look, Davide, now the small lines are forming, and to the eye it seems that the nougat is ready. Now you can see that it comes away from the sides of the machine. Now my mother will take a small piece of the mixture to test in water. From the sound that it makes, from its click as it hits the water, we understand if it is ready or not. If it's ready, we throw in the almonds.
Can you see? It seems like a small boat.
Yes, it is ready. Throw in the almonds.
Do you think that's enough?
Yes, just a little more and that's enough.
Mixing in the almonds and the tiring work of the nougat maker is almost over. The experience of his mother Elvira is shown in the way she does this work. She cuts off the correct amount of nougat for each box, using her practiced eye. Final finishing touches make this nougat more appealing, and people will be happy to buy it. Today, our artisans have mixed and finished this nougat using almonds, but the next batch of nougat will be made with walnuts and hazelnuts, so as to supply the same nougat with another flavor. To get a superb product, it is very important to use the very best quality nuts. Every year is different. The harvest can be scarce or abundant. Usually, the nougat makers prefer to use the hazelnuts from their own woods because they are tastier than the ones that arrive from mainland Italy, and quite often they prepare and toast them themselves. In this oven, so many people have cooked, toasted, and roasted for many hundreds of years. We can only imagine how many people have been here to warm themselves with its heat in the very cold winters, and how many stories have been told in this room, everyone relaxed, sitting around this fire. Today, Elvira has been toasting the hazelnuts for about half an hour. The cooking time depends very much on the size of the oven and also the humidity of the nuts that are ready when they start to brown. I will take the nuts out of the oven now because they cannot be over toasted when they are chopped up. Beautiful, just right. Not only must the nougat be ready for the beginning of the festival, but other typical sweets must be made as well. Pardulas, pabacinas, panesaba are some of the sweet delicacies that the visitors love to find when they arrive here in Arezzo.
Questo è su vanesaba.
This is panesaba, and this is the icing that we put on top to make it sparkle. It is an icing made with more honey than is put into the mix. After the icing, we put on the sprinkles and decoration. These are little cakes made with cheese called pardule in our dialect, made with sheep's and goat's cheese, because here in Arezzo, this is the traditional way that we make them.
Taglie belle, prego signora, calde! Calde, calde! Prendile così, va! E belle!
The Chestnut and Hazelnut Festival is perhaps one of the most popular events in the autumn here, and thousands of people will attend. The open fires and the cooking smoke that rises into the air all contributes to making a rather cozy but welcoming atmosphere in this village. Obviously, one of the most appreciated things are the roasted chestnuts and the people who offer a sample. We can perhaps think that they do this with the idea of a sale, and this is true in part. But these villagers offer a taste of the products of their village and their lives, and that has an even deeper significance. It offers them the possibility to show something that is deeply rooted into this society: hospitality. This characteristic, even if this is typical of all Sardinians as a whole, is much more noticeable in the people who live inland on this island, especially in the Barbagia.
Belle, belle! Calde, calde! Prego! Belle? Calde, calde!
During the festival, it is possible to visit the pomological or fruit exhibition. Most people cannot imagine that there are so many different types of chestnut, and they are always pleasantly surprised when they know the names of each different kind. However, if in nature there is such a vast number of varieties, not all are appreciated by humans. In fact, there are not too many that we like, even though they can be prepared in different ways. We can taste the chestnuts roasted or boiled, but others use them as the main ingredient for the preparation of honey or jams. Leah and the other women in Aritzo are very skillful in making these tasty products. Many of these are made from personal expertise, especially as the main ingredients are all here in the local woods and on the mountains near Aritzo. Other different flavors can be obtained by using the ancient country recipes that someone experimented with hundreds of years ago. All the visitors love these local delicacies and the culture that has developed them, made by these easygoing people who do not want to exchange their old ways for the modern world. As we observe their small shops, it is as if we are looking at exhibits in a museum rather than at a retailer. Some are selling sweets and local woodland produce. Others have wines, salamis, and cheeses that have matured in their dark cellars for a long time, so that they acquire that wonderful taste that has made them famous all over the world, and that the same products created in the industrial world cannot even compare. Tasting these culinary delights from Sardinia is such a delight for those who love good food, excellent cooking, and traditional fare. Just as it began, the Chestnut Festival happily comes to an end. All very much appreciated, particularly the folk groups that came from all over the island with their songs and dancing that express their culture and put on show their colorful local costumes. Towards the end of the 1700s, Bacchus Soulis was born in Arezzo and was famous primarily for his beautiful poetry that were adapted as songs to be sung at local festivals that are held all over Sardinia. But most of all, it was the women of Arezzo who loved to sing these songs whilst collecting the chestnuts or working in the fields. Unfortunately, several people convinced him to abandon his quiet life full of good intentions and made him live the life of an outlaw. A great mural is dedicated to him, depicting him as an outlaw, always ready to defend himself from those who unjustly accused him and therefore ruining his life. His enemies probably continued to plot behind his back and ended his life with bullets from a hunting rifle shot from behind a bush. He died right inside this courtyard. It was May 13th, 1838. Still today, Sardinians sing the poetry of the Bandit Poet, especially a famous group formed in Aritzo that has taken his name, the Bacchus Soulis Choir. The songs express the deep feelings of the Barbaricino poets, not only love songs, but songs of hope and resignation by this local ancestor. Some of these songs intone the intimate feelings of this welcoming land, turning the spotlight onto secrets and tales of the mountains that are so dear to all Sardinians.
Viva la Sardegna!
Year after year, even on this peaceful island in the Mediterranean, summer leads into autumn, then becoming winter, and following on, it is spring again, the season of new birth and of harvests, with the awakening of plants and their new colors and the good nature that has always distinguished these people of ARITZO. This wonderful community that is perched up on high, right in the very heart of Sardinia, on the slopes of the Gennargentu Mountains, where, rejoicing in the fresh water springs and the cool and sharp mountain air, they live their lives in total contact with nature and will continue to do so. As long as there are trees in the woods that bear fruit, they will be there to collect it, season after season, and always happy to share their culture with those who wish to get to know it, because this is their life, the life of the people of the mountains.